Coach and counselor explores how today's youth benefit from intentional, empowering adult leadership. Each episode blends perspectives from coaches, mentors, players, and mental health professionals, shaping the next generation on and off the field. From tough conversations to inspiring transformations, we dive into what it takes to support young people in today's world. All right, welcome. We have a 35-year coaching career legend here, Gregg Beemer from the Dayton Classics, who is the Director of Player Development and Player Placements, recruiting. Started his career many years ago with the Bowling Green State as an assistant baseball coach, moved on to Wright State Baseball as an assistant baseball coach there for a few years. For the last 22 years straight, has been the Midwest Ohio Baseball League Director of player development and player operations, and then in some capacity with Dayton Classics for the last 18 years, last 15 being specifically as the Director of Player Development and Player Placement. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Let's, if you don't mind, let's start right there at the Dayton Classics. Tell us what you guys are all about, what you do, how you're different, and if someone's interested in joining the Dayton Classics, why should they come with you as opposed to someone else?
The Dayton Classics started 30 years ago next year. So we're 29 years old. I came on board. I'd coached 5 years of college baseball, started coaching when my kid starts playing, and realized when they were 15, I had a bunch of kids that could play college baseball, but I had no idea how to make that happen anymore. So I went around the Dayton area and tried to find out who could help us. And I settled ultimately on the Dayton Classics. And initially they wanted all my players, and they really didn't want me very much. They didn't really want parent coaches. It took me about 4 meetings to convince them that I was different than, your typical parent coach because of my background. And so I came on board in 2007 with them. Started learning the recruiting stuff. And then in 2010, the guy who was running it took a new job that took him to China, and Shazam, all of a sudden I'm running the Dayton Classics. I think the Dayton Classics are different for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are really an accountability club. We don't accept effort and energy lapses. We don't accept bad teammates. We dismiss people. We'll leave a tournament if we're in a situation where we've run out of arms, and we're not going to extend arms beyond our capacity. As a result of that, though, we have more players on our rosters. And that helps in the accountability standpoint, because you have to be able to put a butt under on a bench once in a while when they violate the effort energy issues. Not playing issues, not mistakes on the field, effort energy issues. But you also have to be able to have enough pitching to get through your 4, 5, 6, 8 game weekends that some of these events are doing. And if you don't manage that properly, you end up like we played against a team this year that had a game started on Thursday, and we were playing them on Sunday, and they had a kid who had thrown 184 pitches and a kid who'd thrown 168 in that weekend already. We didn't have a kid throw more than 95 pitches the whole time, and nobody showed twice. They were all in one game scenarios. There's a lot of guys out there that say they pay attention to arm care, but don't really pay attention to arm care. That particular game, after the game, I went over and we got beat. The young guys that were coaching were college kids. And I went over to him and I said, hey, you need to understand that what you're doing with these kids, they only had 11 players. It just wasn't enough. And I said, your organization is not doing you any favors because you don't have any choices. But they didn't really understand that they had violated some potential health issues for those kids. But the kid that was in right field, he threw 184 pitches. There was a ball hit into right center, and he had to shuffle it underhand to the center fielder to throw in. What if we'd hit the ball down the line? What's he going to do? Kick it in like Paul O'Neill did in 1997 or something?
Yeah.
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 But
so
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and finish up. Then I have a kind of a question on that.
So I think the fact that we really care about accountability is different. The biggest problem I think with young coaches today is they have difficulty holding kids accountable. Parents don't want them held accountable, and coaches are young and inexperienced at having that conversation with parents afterwards when you've held a kid accountable.
Yeah, so there's my question, right? And therein lies the problem is when you're in a club scenario where family's paying X amount of dollars for their son to play a sport, because they're paying for it, they want their son to play basically in every inning of every game. So it's tough I'm sure from an accountability standpoint to say, hey, you're not playing today. And then they just say, well, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to a different organization. So how do you juggle that of, sticking to, what I think is right? I think what you're doing is right, but it's got to be tough for a retention if Johnny's not playing every inning of every game.
Yeah. So we have teams 8 to 18 and kind of manage the teams differently. So I'm going to talk about our 15 to 18s, which I manage directly. We manage those like minor league baseball. I'm the general manager. Our pitching coordinator, Nick Wagner, runs all of our pitching stuff. So on Mondays, we will look at the schedule for the week and we will lay out the pitching rotations. I've got an Excel spreadsheet. Now we're going to Google Docs. We're advancing, going to Google Docs. In this spreadsheet, we put in there the starter and 2 relief pitchers for that day. We also put in all the position guys. And then for us, we're going to hit 11 every day. Because if we're going to carry 15, which is our typical roster is 15, sometimes we'll have some POs and we'll have more than 15. But we're going to try to hold at 15 because when you have an injury at the 15 to 18-year-old level, it's a longer term issue. And sometimes those kids don't come back. On an 8-week season, if you get an arm issue or some of the other leg issues that you get, guys don't come back. So 15 is the right number. But we're going to hit 11, and then we're going to have a starting pitcher and 2 relief guys. I got 14 guys that are in the lineup or plan to be in the lineup out of our 15 guys. And I control that for every team 15 to 18. So it goes into that system, and that way we control pitchers not going to shortstop, not catching the next day, those kinds of things. And everybody plays. I mean, there's just we don't lose kids because they don't play. Now, when we hold kids accountable and parents don't think that he ought to be accountable, we'll sometimes find out, hey, that kid's not the right kid for us. And we're not the right place for him. Because if you're not willing to accept that accountability, then you shouldn't be here. Because what we're trying to do is prepare kids to play in college. We've put 365 kids into college baseball, 32 guys into professional baseball, 4 guys in the big leagues. If you don't want to prepare to try to play college baseball, we are the wrong place for you. So you have to get used to the fact that you're not going to play every inning. In the transfer portal era for sure, if you've got a freshman kid going to a Division I school, the chances of him playing are really rare. They were rare before, and they're really rare now. Right? We've got a two-way kid going to Marshall. He got a chance to be on the mound as a freshman. He probably is going to struggle offensively to be on the field. Now, could he be there by the time it's over? He could. But I don't. His chance as a freshman is on the mound. But we have to prepare kids for the fact that every single kid they're going to run into going forward is going to be a stud.
Yep.
And when parents,
So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, so you only have 15, which, when you initially said this of, you carry larger rosters. I mean, 15's, in the grand scheme of things in that age range, it's really not that big. I've coached on teams with 20 to 22 kids, a lot of 11 of them being POs. So
Yeah, and
I think
we have those on occasion too. But with the thinking about one of the changes of the game over the last 15 years has been the number of teams that are out there. So finding 11 quality POs in our neck of the woods really hard to find.
tough. Yeah. Well, let me be the devil's advocate on the other side. So sounds like the only people that you're losing are ones that you're okay with, right? Because they have that effort issue.
Well,
But
and
but do you,
generally, yeah.
but do you get any pushback on batting 11? Your top two, three, four hitters on the team, are they saying, "Hey, man, like inevitably, I'm losing in at bat every game or two because you're batting 11, and if you only batted 9, I could get more at bats." And like, is that an issue with any of your hitters?
I don't think it's ever an issue with hitters. Occasionally, it's an issue with bats, right? So
Right.
so
Well,
um, and that is that a legitimate? Yeah, I mean, you're going to lose some at bats, but
yeah.
you're still going to get. I mean, we we keep a pretty steady top 6 or 7 guys, and then the bottom half of that is typically rotating a little bit. So I think like this year on the team that I coached, our top guys got 120-ish kind of plate appearances, and the bottom guy got 60.
Yeah.
You know,
So besides the tournaments and the games, how else is Dayton different? What do you do outside of game day or game weekends that is a separator?
so we're practicing at least once a week. I think there's a lot of people that are not practicing. The other thing that's a little different, we don't do any POs who just show up and just pitch. Again, going back to this idea that we're preparing kids to play in college, they've got to be prepared to do the other things that you do in a game when you're not pitching. They got to be prepared for that process. I think our training is a little bit different. We've got an all-inclusive model. One of the things you guys help us with is obviously the fundraising side, and we're trying to control the cost factors for the parents and the barriers to training. And in Ohio right now, there are almost no rules for the high schools in terms of what they can do in the off season. Virtually no rules. And so what we were finding was that players were having to pay for additional training. We had team training, but they were paying for additional training. And it was becoming a barrier because they couldn't plan well because they didn't know what their high school was going to require them or want them to do. And so we went to an all-inclusive model that says, okay, we're going to charge you a little more, but there's not going to be any additional charges. So we're going to do training from 4 to 8:30 Monday through Friday and 9 to 12 on Saturday. We'll have structured training. All you have to do is go in, sign up on the Google Docs, and come in. So you don't have to worry about that. And there's never that barrier of, hey, I got to go in and sign him up again. If they show up here, we're going to work with them, even if they haven't signed up. We want them to sign up so we make sure we've got enough trainers around to do all the training. But every day we're going to have guys lifting and doing baseball flows. One of our partners is Baseball Flows out of California. They're going to do that for movement training, and they're going to be strength training if they can, because of what they have to do outside of school. Additionally, we're going to do pitching, catching, hitting on a daily basis. So it's available to them anytime. The other thing is the technology that we're using. Pelotero is one of our partners, and they are a hitting app program. that's allowing us to reach out to those players who can't get to our facility. We have some kids that are 90 minutes away. If they can't get here, we can still help them on the training and development side. Let's say the football kids or the kids who are far away. We can put together a program for them for 1 day a week so they can hit, or 2 days a week, or whatever that they want. And then we can monitor that through video and some other things. Those things I think are different.
Tell, if you can, just kind of give me a high level of, what it is that Pelotero is doing. I know there's been a long evolution of what they've tried to accomplish. What's sort of the high level of if someone was to work as another organization contracts with Pelotero, what do they get? What's their service?
The service is taking and doing biomechanics analysis, and then providing swing drills, progressive swing drills, and then talking about the tracking of your games and practices. So thinking through the approach side of the hitting and putting some structure to that that the kids can do either on their own or in where it especially helps us is in the off season for us. So when they're off with their high school program, they can take these they can take either videos and upload them, or they can take the approach questionnaire at the end, and we can have a real discussion about what they're doing right and wrong. Are we hitting the right pitch? Are we taking the pitch we ought to hit? Are we, some of those kinds of things. So I think it's a deeper thought process, and it's a structured piece of that for us.
Great. So here's a guy who's, an old school guy, right, by heart, 35 years into coaching, definitely not afraid of the new school side of things with technology. I know you've worked with Blast in the past.
Yep.
Sounds like you're working
and
with
Blast,
DK.
And Blast is great. Pelotero just happens to work with DK, and so that's kind of why that evolution.
Yeah. So that's great. So kind of merging old school and new school. Why don't we take it from there? Talk about all the things that have changed in the last 35 years. Like what's the, top of mind? Maybe we don't have enough time for that maybe, but what's some of the top level things that jump to your mind of like, maybe for the good, maybe one or two things for the good that's better over the last 35 years, and one or two things that aren't?
Well, I think the players are bigger, stronger, faster, just in general.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that. On the downside, their baseball IQ, they don't watch enough baseball. They don't play any just pick up baseball. I ran a camp this year, and we were trying to do a wiffle ball game with pitcher's hands, and I had to explain to kids what pitcher's hands were, and I'm like, what do you mean? They didn't understand. But the players are not nearly as different as people think. I think that they want to be better, and the only thing that they require more trust that this is going to make me better. In the old school world, if the coach told you this is going to help you, there wasn't a lot of question about that. Now they want to get on video and Twitter and see what the Twitter guy says about it,
Yeah.
So there's that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Parents are different in that, they're not really comfortable with you holding their kids accountable in ways that you used to hold them accountable. We never ran kids as punishment, but we would run kids to make a point. When we had kids on the road who screwed up and were doing stupid stuff, I'd go over to the other team and I'd say, hey, we got all the foul balls today, and I'd take our 3 or 4 guys that were screw ups that weekend, and their job was to make sure we got all those foul balls back. And I didn't want to see the foul ball land and bounce more than once,
Right.
If I did that today, I don't know what would happen.
Yeah, I remember coaching I think there were 11 at the time, and I had the same. I only had 10 kids on the team. I batted all 10 at that time. Had a kid in the outfield and center field, great athlete, had a ton of potential, and ball just dropped right in front of him. And I mean, it was vivid to me and everyone that he he didn't provide effort. Right, this is what you pride yourself on. So I called timeout. I brought everyone in and into the mound, and him being one of them. And I said, "Hey, did you give 100% effort?" He's like, "No." Like, just agreed. Like, yeah, I didn't do it. And I was like, "All right," switched him out. It wasn't showing him up by any means, but of like, I just wanted him to realize that we give full effort here. Oh boy, did I get in trouble the next day. I got a written letter, a nasty note before the game started from the parent, and I was like, I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm sorry. Like, he's got a ton of potential as a human being, let alone as a baseball player and an athlete. This is one thing that he has to learn, and I'm sorry that I was the one to do that. Well, actually, I'm not sorry that I had to do that. He's going to be a better person because of it.
For sure. We've had, I've had situations where we went down to play and we had 9 with I don't know, it's a 13-year-old team, I think. And we had a kid similar issue. He didn't run out of ground balls. And we only had 9 guys that day. I sat him down. We played with 8 the last 3 innings. And,
That's great.
those kinds of things are things that will make an impact on a kid that really don't matter in the scheme of things. Nobody cares if you win that game. I mean, it's kind of like the other, there's kind of a myth out there that parents think that you gotta play on Sundays in the tournaments, because the college coaches care about that. First off, the college coaches aren't there; they're at home. They're not there on.
They're usually gone.
They're gone.
Yeah,
They're gone
by Sunday.
Yeah, they're gone, and they don't care anyway. So, that thing is not real.
No. Well, we're going to take a quick little short break here for our sponsor. But let me pose a question to you to think about here for a second, and then we'll come right back to it. What's what's some of the things that keep you guys up at night as a staff, as a coaching staff? Like what keeps you up at night that you really struggle with? If something wakes you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, what's that one thing, or what are those couple things? Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
As we're talking about the challenges coaches face with young athletes, it reminds me of something that affects every youth sports organization, the administrative nightmare that can pull coaches away from actually coaching. I recently spoke with Jennifer from the Riverside Youth Soccer League, and she told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "We were spending more time managing registrations and chasing down forms than we were developing players." Sound familiar? That's exactly why organizations across the country are turning to OperationPlayerAssist.com. They specialize in handling all those behind-the-scenes headaches that eat up your time. Registration systems that actually work, automated communication tools that keep parents informed without blowing up your phone, and emergency response protocols that give you confidence when things go sideways. Jennifer's League saw immediate results. Registration time cut in half, parent complaints about communication dropped to almost 0, and here's the best part: coaches could focus on coaching instead of paperwork. If you are tired of administrative chaos stealing time from what really matters, developing young athletes, I encourage you to schedule a free 15-minute demo with the team at OperationPlayerAssist.com. See firsthand how they can streamline your operation. Visit OperationPlayerAssist.com and click Schedule Demo to book your 15-minute consultation, because when the administrative burden is lighter, everyone wins. Coaches, parents, and most importantly, the kids. OperationPlayerAssist.com, supporting the game behind the game.
All right, we're back with Gregg Beemer, Dayton Classics 35-year veteran coach. Posed a question to him before the break, which was, not necessarily just you, but your whole coaching staff at the Dayton Classic. What keeps you guys up at night?
I think the thing that's keeping us up at night right now is, how do we take our game back from the tournament and showcase directors who have massive financial interest in what's going on? You've got private equity is buying up sports franchises and sports organizations and tournaments. We've got, tournament fees at $2,000 to $3,000. You're playing one game a day. Sometimes you're starting on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. How do you allow your families to have a life that they should have while getting the development that you need to have for your players and the exposure that you need to have for your players? How do we take that back in an environment where there's so much money out there for people and they don't really care about us? They care about us in the fact that they want us to come back and do their stuff. But like for instance, there's some tournaments that we've played in the past that this year I got notification that you've got to play a fall qualifier in order to be in the event next year. Well, we played this event since 2011. Are you kidding me? And then the fact that we're playing one game a day and spread it out over 5 or 6 days is just insane. So what we've been trying to do is bring back some round robin events, by partnering with like-minded, teams and trying to get control of this thing a little bit. So we're playing 3 or 4 weekends of our 7 or 8 are going to be round robin events. So we control the venue, the time, the travel, the hotels, gate fees, tournament fees. All we're doing is taking the cost of the actual event. We're taking the umpires, the baseballs, field costs, and just splitting them among teams. And then we're playing, we know what the competition level is because we know who these people are, right? And we can do it in an environment where we can play a game on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. So we want to get 5 games and we can do that. If our pitching that week says, hey, we need 4, then we can arrange that. But we can do it in a way that makes sense and you can control the time. I mean, how many times are you at an event and it's 9 o'clock on Saturday night? You don't know where or when you're playing on Sunday. And some of this, it's nuts.
That's always been my biggest frustration as a coach. I mean, I'm in Colorado, cold weather climate. We have to travel, because not only for the competition, but we have to travel just because of the weather. And so we play a lot of out of states. And so I think you're hitting the nail on the head of we're leaving on a Wednesday or a Thursday, depending on the tournament, what your pool games are, but you may not know you definitely don't know what your pool games are until you've already booked your flight. So you might have booked your flight on Wednesday and are going to pay for a hotel on Wednesday night with the assumption that you're going to play on Thursday. And there's been plenty of times that we didn't play on Thursday. And then you play your doubleheader on Friday and that's your pool games. And then you have no idea when you're going to play on Saturday or Sunday. Well, you already have a flight booked on home for Sunday and you have no idea if you're going to make it to that flight. And there's been countless times. So I love this idea. I've always agreed with, if I'm going to run a tournament, I'm going to say, this is when your first game is, this is when your last game is. So you can book your flight in, your flight out, your hotels. You're not going to get extra nights in hotels and extra nights in with airline change fees. And as you said, everyone can just plan out their pitching schedule, which is also brutal, right? Is you don't leave in the typical schedule that is right now, you have to hold on to guys with the assumption that you're going to win this game. So that way he pitches the next game. And so there's guys that have, flown home, not pitching, or maybe pitched an inning, and then parents are irritated. And it's like, yeah, I agree with you, but
what do you
tell
do?
me what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
We're fortunate in Dayton, Ohio. We have a tremendous amount of really good baseball within 90 minutes or 2 hours. So we can actually travel back and forth a lot of times, especially if you're in a situation where you're doing a round robin and hey, we're going over and we're going to play in Indianapolis at 11-1 on Saturday. And then they're going to come back and play at our place noon and 2 on Sunday. You don't have to stay in hotels in that environment. So those kinds of things matter. The other thing we try to add into that is we try to have BP on the field if we can. Because kids don't hit on the field. They don't take I&O.
No.
No.
Neither of those. That's
right.
the other thing that's changed.
Correct. And I don't think for the better. I think those two things add value for the players and the coaches and quite frankly, any college coaches that you can get to come out, which by the way is a challenge nowadays, until the end of that summer for the 17 youth thing. That's the other thing that's changes. And I think this part's good. They've pushed back the dates for early commitments for the young guys. That's helpful. We don't have any longer 15-year-olds or 14-year-olds doing a lot of commitment stuff. So that's good. but it also means that with the transfer portal, they're chasing college guys, all summer until the end of the summer. For the 27 guys, they just started working on those guys recently. And frankly, a lot of 26 guys just started recently.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. Has that changed the dynamic of your approach to traveling or your approach to tournaments, knowing that I'm sure you're seeing it because I've been seeing it. There's less and less college coaches coming out and watching
For sure.
high school kids because they're at JUCO tournaments, they're at collegiate summer leagues, grabbing transfer portal guys. So
Yeah.
that's one. Why wouldn't you grab a polished physical 21-year-old to come into your program versus an unknown 16 or 17 or 18-year-old, right?
College baseball is probably better than it's ever been across the board because you've got older, more experienced players everywhere. They're also bigger, stronger, faster. It's better. That doesn't mean it's better for the freshman kid, right? Because he's got more challenges in getting into the arena. But if you hold kids accountable and you talk to them about physicality and you talk to them about making sure that they're doing what they need to do to maximize the gifts that God has given them, because that's all they're responsible for. Just maximize what God's given. And then if you spend enough time and energy with them and their parents to make sure that they understand, hey, our job is to get you to the right place, academically, athletically, socially, financially. And we're going to tell you where that is. Now, you don't have to believe us, but we're going to tell you what we think based on the 35 years. And one thing about the gray hair in the 35 years is they do listen to me most of the time. And that's good.
Is that a struggle? Because I've definitely had this struggle of like, hey, we strongly believe that Johnny's going to be, a really good mid-level Division II kid, and that's where we think he should go, like that area. They don't want to believe that, and then they stretch and then they go somewhere to Division I and they bounce back after a year. How do you overcome that?
We spend an awful lot of time talking about what those kids look like. I think one of the things that we do extraordinarily well is we survey with our relationships at both the Division I, Division II, NAIA, JUCO. We survey those coaches. What are you looking for? What do you need this year? What does your guy look like? What does a right-handed starting pitcher look like for you? What's he physically? What's the velo, spin, all those kinds of things. What's a left-handed guy look like? What's a catcher look like? What's your first baseman? Short. We've got a pretty good understanding of the 30 or 40 programs that we know really, really well. I know who I can send to them and who I can't. A few years ago, we had two Division I quality arms, a 5'10" left-handed kid and a 6'4" right-handed kid. Well, the 6'4" right-handed kid had a lot more upside, but the left-handed kid, really, really good, polished, ready to go. Well, I knew one of the coaches would not look at the left-handed kid, too small for him. So he ends up taking the right-handed kid who had a good career, but not a great career. Well, the left-handed kid ends up at a D2 and is an All-American. Yeah.
That's sort of my other question then, because how do you also have honesty with the college coaches and then also get them to really listen to you? Because I feel like, yeah, we've been around the block. We've been here for I've been 30 years in coaching. You're 35 years of coaching. I'd like to tell you with complete and utter honesty, if you ask me some good questions, I'll tell you the right answers, right? I'm like, hey, I really think this kid's going to be great one day. Yet they don't necessarily listen to us. How do you get them to say, I think you need to take a flyer on this kid?
I think all you can do is just have that conversation. Now, I try to get their eyes on a kid. We don't do a lot of buying a pig in a poke, kind of stuff. Most of it's we try to get kids in front of guys. We had a kid who and we have a really good relationship with Wright State. Wright State uses our indoor facility for their live stuff because our visuals and our lights are better than what they have on campus. And I coached there for 4 years, and I'm still close to that program. And we had a kid who wanted to go to Wright State. And they thought, well, I don't know. He's a big kid. He's gonna get bigger. He plays shortstop for us, but I knew he wasn't going to be a shortstop in college. I knew he was going to be a left fielder or a first baseman, maybe a third baseman, and left-handed hitting kid. And they didn't show enough love. And he said, hey, if it's not Wright State, I want to go to Florida. Well, we got him to Central Florida, and all he did was start and play 220 games at Central Florida, and And the Wright State guys said to me, yeah, we missed on that one, but a lot of other guys they've taken have been worked out great. So I think I've earned the right, because like when coaches come and ask me, hey, go over your roster with me. Okay. There aren't days where I tell them 14 of our 15 kids can play for you. Okay. I mean, I hear these conversations going with other coaches sometimes at these tournaments, and this guy's going over every single kid trying to sell them to, ACC schools. And I'm like, dude, I haven't had an ACC kid in 3 years.
Yeah.
Now
I remember coaching and helping with recruiting and softball with the team, and University of Tulsa was there, and she said, I didn't know who she was. And I said, where are you from? She said, oh, University of Tulsa. I said, we don't have anyone that can play there. And she looked at me like, are you kidding me? And I was like, well, I'm just trying to be honest. Like, I don't want you to waste your time. There's no one currently on our team that's left that could play at that level. And she's like, wow, almost like I've never experienced that level of honesty.
Well, and I think, we have had that level of honesty every year that I've been involved in it, because I know what it's like. My son is the head baseball coach at Butler University. I've got really good friends that coach, and I just know, nobody it's not good for anybody when that kind of situation evolves, where you're putting kids in situations where they're going to be marginal players. And the other thing about the Dayton Classic is our kids want to play. Okay. There's a lot of programs. They want a little bit of swag. They want a cool sweatshirt. They want to go to a party, pick up a check because they're a baseball guy. That's not our guys. That's not our guys.
You've used this term on that note, substance over flash. So how is that something that you coach at Dayton, and that's clearly something that's changed over the years as well?
For sure. The whole Twitter sphere stuff, everybody wants that flash. We're not very good at that. We got to get better at it because the marketplace demands it. But what we try to tell our kids is what matters is what you do every day. So when parents tell you that their kid didn't get a chance at XYZ school or XYZ program, that is absolutely, completely untrue, because every single day they practice, they go to the weight room, they go to the classroom every single day. There are no exceptions to that. They have a chance to earn the right to be on the field, to be a starter, to be an impact guy every single day. So what you have to do is show up every day and do your job. That's all. Yep. That's what you're responsible for. And that's the substance that I'm talking about versus the flash of, hey, I had a really good Twitter video, I hit that 101. Yeah. Okay. That was off the tee. Now let's go in the cage and let's do it against 86.
Right. What's up? You worked with some great coaches over the years, I'm sure, especially at the college ranks, and maybe some guys that you have in there now. What's some great advice that you've gotten from some of those people that you perhaps now pass along to others?
The one that really kicked me the first year was I had a guy tell me, hey, be yourself. I was modeling myself after the other assistant coach, which was completely not my personality. And the head coach comes into me and he said, hey, I wanted you because of who you are. Be you. Don't be somebody else. So that was important.
Yeah.
Another guy told me, hey, there's a tendency for us to forget how hard the game is to play. Especially as you get away from playing it. Remember how hard the game is to play. An old scout, it used to be when I started in 1986. By the way, I was at a plate meeting this year, and one of the umpires said to me, he says, how long have we been doing this together? And I said, you and me, probably 20 years. He says, when was your first job? I said, 1986. He looked at me and said, I was 12. but when you think about those things, I had an old scout back in those days. There were only 12 or 15 teams in the entire state that anybody followed. There was not travel baseball like there is today. It was all Legion-based stuff. And the pro scouts and the college guys were at the same place all the time. And one of the pro guys took a liking to me. And he spent a lot of time talking to me about how you can project kids and how you can tell whether a kid can play just by watching the way they move. And so what we would do before the game was we would put on a piece of paper, we would look at the kids and we would put them in position based on the way we watched them move. And it was amazing as I worked with him on that. I got to the point where I could tell you all the middle infield guys. I could tell you all the corner guys. I could tell you whether the pitcher was right-handed or left-handed. And I could tell you which guys were pitchers. And I'm convinced, I tell our guys this all the time, I'm convinced that I could take a tryout group, have them walk out to center field and walk back, and I could put them in positions and pick a team, and I'd have a pretty good chance to have a pretty good team.
Yeah.
So that process is really valuable.
I'm smiling while you say that because Billy Martin, who runs the Slammers organization in Colorado, he, to this day, every tryout season that comes along, he says, one of these days, I'm going to bring everyone to the gym and I'm going to give them a basketball. And I'm going to pick, I'm going to go back and start coaching 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds or whatever it is. And I'm going to roll out a basketball and I'm going to watch them play basketball. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to pick that guy. That's the same thing you said, right? That's my shortstop. That's my second baseman. He's left-handed. I'll take him. He goes, I guarantee you my team will be better than anyone else's based on, just watching their athleticism.
Amen.
Which kind of leads to that whole, it's a topic I think that always gets brought up is early specialization. And I know there are baseball players today are bigger, faster, stronger. You said it earlier, but are they better athletes? Or are they getting hurt because they're not playing other sports at the younger ages?
Yeah,
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would prefer our kids to play multiple sports. I think it helps their athleticism. But as important as that, I think it helps them learn to be competitive all the time. One of the unique things about having a facility and running an organization is I want competition everywhere. And the training models don't do really well in the competition side unless you're really, really intentional about it. We've somehow managed now to convince guys that the best way to be great baseball players, especially in college, is to train and not to play. There's strange stuff going on in the college summer league stuff as well, and some of it's driven by this training mindset. But I wish kids would play multiple sports as long as they could. Now, I don't really like it when they're playing and they're not playing at all. If they're not competing, because the competition part of it, I think, is what I like as much as the athleticism. The real problem is if they're not doing that, they're not doing the hard stuff that gets them more athletic. One of the reasons we're partnering with the Baseball Flows people is to bring more athleticism and more movement training all the way down to our younger guys. We're trying to follow the USA baseball model on youth development stuff. And a big piece of that is trying to increase the general athleticism of our baseball players, because the young kids, especially, my grandkids, they don't move very well. One of them has a chance to be a player, but he still doesn't move very well. But now he's 5. He'll get better. But but part of the reason we're bringing the baseball flows thing is to try to get those kids to have 15 minutes of every of our sessions here where they're working on movement stuff, you know,
Yeah.
just so they move better. And we're putting together what I would call a ninja gym, you know, some pull-up stuff, some ropes, some tumbling, some of those kinds of things, just to try to get them to do some things that we used to do as kids kind of outdoors, because we didn't have, you know, all the technology and all the my phone stuff and all the video games.
Yeah, I love that. I love the Ninja Gym idea. That's fantastic. I just drove my son home about a month ago from Arizona. So we had a 12-hour ride together. And so he's in college, you know, playing. He'll be you know, in the same conference as your son. Your hopefully your son can
where's he
lay
at?
over cheat. He's at Georgetown.
Okay.
So same Big East. So
Yeah.
tell him to leave a cheesy fastball over the middle of the plate for him, if you wouldn't mind.
Unfortunately, they lost too many of those over the last couple of years.
But you know, sort of the same. It's kind of like the same mindset, even, you know, going into college, like play your 60 games in the college season, and then go right away, go to the summer league season and play another 60 games, and then you go to the fall and you play another bunch of games. And so in there is, you know, at times some lack of training and some lack of development and lack of like, hey, I need to make some changes. And so, you know, he did the whole left Georgetown, went to a summer league, and then we just decided to, you know, like if you continue to do what you're doing, you're going to continue to get the same results. And we knew he was, you know, as athletic and had a bunch of you know, ability and talent. We're like, I think it's time we do something different. And so we flew him home, drove him to Arizona, dropped him off a drive line for 7-8 weeks. And what, you know, triggered that for me was you saying, yeah, he really lacked some mobility issues. He really lacked some strength in certain places. And so, yes, they worked on him from a mechanical standpoint for his swing, and he got some great competition with the machines that they have there. But I think the biggest thing for him was he was literally, as you were saying, doing some tumbling and backhand, you know, springs and just different things that increase mobility that I think are going to, you know, really pay off for him, especially prevention of injury, because each of the last 2 years he had started his season with an oblique injury.
Boy, and
So,
those things don't heal, man. They're hard.
Yeah. And as you know, in this sport, like part of it is just staying healthy. You know, how can you stay healthy throughout the course of a long season like that? So yeah, I love that you're doing that. I love that's, you know, going to be incorporated in there, because inevitably, yeah, that's something that's missing from.
Yeah, we've hired 2 gymnasts to run that piece of the operation. So
Yeah, you get that up and going. I'd love to see some videos and pictures of that. I think
we'll try to get in our social media. We'll try to get better at that side of the equation.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of, you know, bumping up to the end of this here. You have any last things that you'd like to say to button this up with us?
No, I just think that what you guys are doing with your Operation Player Assist is a tremendous value to organizations. And ultimately, you know, I'd like to use it differently than we're using it. As you know, it's a supplement to us now. I'd love to be able to get it to the point where we can use it to have that be part of the player fee structure, as opposed to the kind of supplement side of the equation. So, you know, keep doing that side, Tony, and we're going to try to continue to revamp the way at least the Dayton Classics are approaching this process. More than 95% of our kids go on and play in college, and we're not going to let that change, because the way we do business is different than anybody else in terms of the way they get recruiting done. You know, we're doing target marketing on guys and getting them to the right place that way. Everybody else is kind of throwing it out there, trying to do showcases, and, you know, everybody thinks there's the tournament. Go to the tournament and everything's going to be fun. No. First off, you got to get good enough. You got to get physical enough. And then you got to get in front of the right people and show them that you're good enough to help them. And we're going to continue to do that as we go down the road. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's definitely, where my passion is of trying to keep kids in sports, period, because there's, we just kind of talked about that, the lack of athleticism and mobility and well, just simple activity, right,
Yeah,
in
right.
kids' lives nowadays. So really passionate about keeping kids in sports, at the same time keeping coaches in sports as well, because it's expensive for them too. We're losing too many really good coaches to other jobs because we can't afford to keep them in the sport. So that's really where my passion's at, and this podcast is here to to help educate families and coaches and organizations on what we can do better. And I think Dayton Classics is absolutely on the right path of always challenging yourselves. Right, you guys keep challenging yourself to say, how can we get better? How can we get better? And not just being satisfied with where you're at. With adding the gymnastics activities is one of those things of say, hey, here's a deficiency we have within our kids, and let's supplement it. Let's make them better. So I love what you're doing. I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to continuing to work with you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Take care.